What shall I love if not the enigma? Giorgio de Chirico was an Italian artist who originated the short-lived artistic movement called metaphysical painting. He is known for his enigmatic and uncanny depictions of endless city squares and arcaded buildings, immersed in dead silence. Even when figures are present in these paintings, they are often ghostly, shadowy, or non-human. De Chirico was an artist enchanted by mystery, for whom the world of ordinary logic was merely a veil beneath which true reality was hidden. In his 1919 essay We Metaphysicians, de Chirico revealed that Arthur Schopenhauer, and even more so Friedrich Nietzsche, influenced his views on the goals of art, namely that a truly free and profound art should grapple with the nonsense of everyday life. His paintings infuse the most mundane situations with a sense of unease, an unease that no longer allows one to find comfort in the illusion of self-deception. Those who are familiar with philosophical pessimism or watched my video on it would undoubtedly recognize the representation of key pessimistic axioms in de Chirico's work. He is also known for the depiction of mannequins in his paintings, which also reminds one of a horror writer and pessimist, Thomas Ligotti, and apparently Ligotti was influenced by this artist's work. All of de Chirico's metaphysical paintings are an attempt, through metaphor and dream, to tear away this veil of everydayness and leap into beyondness, into a realm where common sense no longer dictates its vulgar principles. This makes de Chirico, and sorry to use a trite term, essentially the artist of the liminal. For me, de Chirico is not only the artist of the liminal, but a liminal artist himself. He never fit into any other artistic movement at the time. The surrealists tried to claim him, but he resisted their worship of the unconscious. He was also against futurism with its overly aggressive cult of mechanized motion. His artistic program was aimed at the primordial foundations of existence, yet he didn't think that the mystery could or should be solved. Haunted, abandoned spaces that he painted on the eve of the First World War were not an open geopolitical commentary, but a general sense of loss, epistemological uncertainty, and a kind of cultural melancholy. In his book on de Chirico, Merjian wrote that the artist countered the standard Gothic trope predicated on memory or nostalgia in favor of the mystery derived from an, quote, aesthetics of forgetting, which Merjian sees as Nietzschean influence. And I find this commentary very illuminating. When we talk about abandoned spaces, depictions of ruins in art, aesthetic fascination with urban exploration, usually the notion of nostalgia and memory come forward, but forgetfulness and oblivion are no less important. Not only because memory and oblivion function in a dialectical manner, but also specifically in the liminal dreamlike aesthetic, there is always a sense of something slipping away from a memory. De Chirico's paintings feel like a second before waking up, before a complete oblivion. The depictions of abandoned, all too familiar, enigmatic spaces and ruins in art were not an invention of the 20th century. As Andreas Huyssen puts it, quote, "The cult of ruins has accompanied Western modernity in waves since the 18th century. Dora Apel, in her Beautiful Terrible Ruins, calls this ruin lust, borrowing this phrase from the English novelist Rose Macaulay, meaning an aestheticized preoccupation with ruins that serve as a source for the sublime. Gothic fiction and art thrived on ruin lust. Surrealist movement also drew inspiration from the interplay between abandoned spaces, melancholy, and mystery. More recently, we can see it in the popularity of urban exploration and online trends like liminal spaces, dreamcore, and backrooms. Now, I don't want to say that dreamcore is the direct heir of the artistic geniuses of the past, but it also possesses a certain quality, a kind of cultural melancholy that is bittersweet, an escapist fantasy that is both comforting and uncanny. It is also not surprising that the popularity of this aesthetic comes in waves in times of uncertainty, when people turn to the otherworldly, to escapism, to nostalgia, to dreams, to something that resides at the margins of our everyday experience. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Modern ruins as a source of the sublime. Houtou village, located in Shenzhen Island in China, was the region's wealthiest fishing village in the 1950s and was originally one of the main residential areas of the island. Changing production methods and increasing living needs forced people to leave this inaccessible village. In the late 1990s, the entire village of over 2000 was relocated. Now, this old fishing village is deserted. After the villagers moved into their own homes, the abandoned old houses were slowly consumed by vegetation, transforming the village into a site that looks like something straight from a dream or a fairy tale. Since the village's former site is adjacent to a cemetery, locals have started to call it a ghost village. Recently, to the surprise of the residents of the island who live near the ghost village, it became popular among tourists and photographers. In 21st century, we see a marked return of interest in ruins and abandoned spaces. What is it with our lust for ruins? Is it a glimpse of a post-human world, an obituary to the world we know, or just simply an aesthetic? Ruins were always a spectacle, but in the age of social media, when all of the must-try tourist attractions are already shown, they provide a certain exclusivity, a glimpse into the hidden. Ruins are being produced all the time. New forms of production and commerce make old constructions and buildings obsolete. There is natural destruction, people live in certain areas, political collisions, and, of course, wars. See, ruins are not created equal. Some are more scenic than the other. An abandoned mall and residential buildings severely damaged by war have a very different air between each other. If you can romanticize the former, you can hardly do the same with the latter. Strictly speaking, the poetic description is usually reserved for 18th century ruins. Picturesque, romantic ruins were considered a source of the sublime. But according to Team Edensor, modern ruins can also be a source of the sublime. They're just closer to a darker variation of the Gothic. The new wave of ruin hunting boom is also stimulated by the birth of new types of ruins. Modern ruins such as abandoned factories, shopping malls, theme parks, and data centers in post-industrial urban environments show how short-lived the promise of the future is. Their presence casts a shadow on the utopian ambitions, the promise of abundance of late-stage capitalism. It is no longer the Gothic fascination with the glory of old socioeconomic and political orders, but a mourning for the future that will never happen. As Jacob Miller in Retail Ruins puts it, these ruins reveal the void that is following capitalism everywhere. Moreover, in recent years, we are now faced with a new form of obsolete, a non-material one. There is this very insightful study by Vincent Miller and Gonzalo Garcia on digital ruins. They explored the early 2000s virtual worlds, like Blue Mars, that are now partially or completely abandoned. The authors reported how in 2014, using avatars, they entered a functioning virtual environment that was completely empty of other users. They described this experience as truly unique from a phenomenological perspective. The digital ruins are special. They never decay in a way that the usual targets of urban exploration do. They are non-material and atemporal. The only fate they have is if developers stop supporting the website and it's going to be out of reach completely. So their decay is manifested in algorithmic regulations. These places are easy to reach. They're just one click away. They are much more accessible than real-life abandoned spaces, yet they are buried under a large amount of data, which makes them even less likely to be stumbled upon than real-life ruins that you can just accidentally pass by. Miller and Garcia describe their experience as a, quote, shock of disconnection. Since the virtual worlds are dependent on interactivity, their whole purpose is to provide a platform for users to engage with the world and each other. What I find relevant for the topic of this video in abandoned digital spaces is that they were the promise of the dream world, which echoes the more recent discourse around metaverse. They themselves promised an escapist fantasy, a space of limitless self-actualization. Now, one can only witness the ghosts of these ambitions. With digital ruins, as with material ones, we see this process of what Joseph Schumpeter called creative destruction. More often than not, it is less costly to create something new than rework or repurpose or simply support the existing building. So in digital worlds, the spaces are just left at the expense of something new. According to Team Edensor, ruination itself is the fate of capitalism, and industrial and now post-industrial ruins in particular expose the waste of capitalism. For politicians, businesses, and locals, these areas signal a disappearing prosperity. Understandably, they are a sore in the eye, and they are often associated with criminal activity. But the potential effective power of ruins, whether digital or material ones, should not be overlooked. An interesting factor is that these ruins exceed their purposes in the hands of urban exploration enthusiasts, game developers who set games in modern ruins, artists and passerbys who just stop to take a picture. Modern ruins start to symbolize and represent more than was originally planned for them. The unsurveilled quality of ruins is also tempting, as it disrupts the controlled urban environment and makes them open to another, more liberating and sensual mode. Ruins are alluring because they are transgressive. More often than not, you are kind of not supposed to be there. And, I'm something of an urban explorer myself. I can tell you that it is extremely difficult to find and access these places. They are usually not on the maps, there can be some security, and some places are simply dangerous because of the extreme destruction and lack of maintenance. I'm literally risking my life there. So maybe modern ruins are useless from a utilitarian perspective, yet they still hold a contemplative value. Dylan Trick, in his Aesthetics of Decay, also looks into this allure and sublime aspects of abandoned, decaying, or ruined places. In describing modern ruins, Trick mentions that, quote, "In the modern ruin, the sense of unfamiliarity, uncanniness, and bewilderment converges. At the same time, ruins reveal the disruption of temporal continuity, as decay or decline is not only a remnant of the past but also a sign of progress. If a monument, a museum, or any other institution of memory is static, ruins are more dynamic, less polished. They correspond to the lived experience of time. Ruins, abandoned spaces, challenge normative ways of remembering, which makes them even more inviting source of the sublime. As Trick points out, such mundane and prosaic places as a functioning shopping mall won't magnetize as the same place left abandoned for a decade. Decay and abandonment bring out a perfectly familiar place in a new light, making it more open to the poetic reflections, to the affective memories that emerge from the unconscious. In his early work, Flatline Constructs, Mark Fisher also makes this point that postmodern subjects are prone to searching for the sublime in decay. We sort of live in the times of the undead, or what he defines as Gothic materialism. Our memories are extended by technology, and aesthetic and cultural trends are constantly artificially resurrected. Nothing ever dies, and nothing is ever forgotten. Fisher viewed these processes mostly in a pessimistic light as based on pathological nostalgia. Much of the philosophical reflection on nostalgia experienced these days grapples with the contradictory or pathological aspects of longing for the past. Nostalgia can be commodified, it can fuel reactionary politics, it can stifle progress. As Frederick Jameson points out in his Postmodernism, contemporary nostalgia is no longer the old passionate longing, but an affectless, quote, depersonalized visual curiosity about the past, a sort of nostalgia deco, or an aestheticized nostalgia that lost its connection to both actual memories and experience. In this regard, some examples of ruin lost can be very superficial. Yet, I don't think that this type of criticism is fair when we talk about the complex nature of how we as humans engage with ruins. Ruins reveal a privileged temporality of slowness and stillness that goes against the constant pursuit of profit and productiveness, making them resistant to the logic of late-stage capitalism. They symbolize cyclicity, unlike the idea of endless linear progress. Abandoned buildings, ruins stimulate fragmented and disorganized memories that are very hard to capture. The sensation that they bring constantly slips away once you try to pin it down or describe. Earlier, I thought it was simply nostalgia, but it is a much more complicated set of sensations. It seems like the underlying motivation here is more metaphysical. There is also definite poetic depth in abandoned places and ruins. I mentioned in some of my previous videos the Poetics of Space by Bachelard, a work that explored the interplay between imagination, memories, and space. A big portion of this book is devoted to the connection between space and the oniric realm, or the realm of dreams. And he doesn't only consider night dreams as psychoanalysts would, but daydreams as well, meaning that spaces are where we dream and where we derive inspiration for dreaming. Spaces evoke involuntary memories that blend with the imagination and create what Bachelard called a poetic image. Ruins and abandoned places provide limitless possibilities for this poetic image to flourish. Social dreaming. I am sure that most viewers of this video are familiar with the image that is considered the patient zero of the liminal aesthetics trend, a 4chan post depicting a liminal space called the Backrooms, which went viral in 2019 with an empty carpeted office space with yellow wallpaper and fluorescent lighting, to which another user added the text which invited readers to imagine finding themselves trapped in such a space. Photographs with liminal spaces were shared online before this post, but after 2019, this niche internet trend of the preoccupation with liminality soon became much more prominent. Now, media that features liminal spaces in some form or another can be found not only on YouTube, Reddit, and TikTok, but also on Chinese social media platforms such as Bilibili and Xiaohongshu. The aesthetic of liminality is well known. It usually includes images of empty, abandoned, disturbingly familiar places, with the addition of such effects as VHS filters, distortion, sounds and texts that seem to be taken out of context, TV noise, glitches that are all set to create an atmosphere of distorted temporality and surrealism, the sense of in-betweenness. Many awesome YouTube video essays dive deep into the minutiae of the term liminal itself, so I'm not going to reiterate the details here. Let's just say that the liminality of these images, videos, and playlists lies in their ability to embody both literal and metaphorical states of in-betweenness. For example, between different spaces, dream and reality, childhood and adulthood, which a lot of people find both dreadful and comforting. Once you learn about the liminal, you notice it everywhere you go. Nowadays, there is a whole genre of what can be called digital folklore that features this aesthetic. Liminal spaces, dreamcore, poolcore. The aesthetic of liminality is featured in various indie games. It also went mainstream and entered real life. For instance, in Shanghai, there is a so-called dreamcore park, which is a cool public space that mimics this dreamlike aesthetic that blends surrealism and nostalgic elements. The space is both comforting and a little bit uncanny. Once you are there, you have this sense of both familiarity because it reminds you of a playground and disorientation, especially when visited at night. The digital folklore that features liminal aesthetics is also commodified now. At least on Taobao, you can buy a perfume that smells like Backrooms or dreamcore. I really like how the seller warns you that the Backrooms perfume smells bad. What is fascinating about the corner of the internet that is preoccupied with the liminality is that it is one of the few that still provides a sense of comfort and a certain type of unity, instead of negative affect and antagonism. It is not a secret that online trends such as liminal spaces, dreamcore, poolcore, and even some videos of urban exploration have a surrealist tinge to them. A lot of users report that these are spaces that they saw in dreams. They have a dreamlike atmosphere, or they try to mimic a dream. There is a 2022 paper by Samantha Steven where she proposes the idea of seeing the online preoccupation with liminal spaces as a form of social dreaming. An observation that I find quite accurate. Moreover, I think that both online creators of digital folklore of liminality and people who share in comments their understanding of the liminal, their memories and dreams after watching videos of urban exploration or ambient liminal playlists, all participate in the creation of what Gaston Bachelard called a poetic image. These collective creative reflections begin to function as a form of communication. And I think that this interest in the liminal can unite people cross-culturally because it deals with something so universal as nostalgia, a sense of loss, uncertainty. Watching videos of abandoned shopping malls in the US that thrived in the recent past is not relatable to me in the sense that I've never experienced what it's like to go shopping as a child with your parents in the 90s in the US. Yet the urban exploration videos that show these malls still stir an unspoken feeling in me. Many find post-Soviet liminality or images of Eastern European grey panel buildings both comforting and melancholic, even when they don't have a first-hand experience of living there. This bittersweet nostalgia somehow resonates with people from different parts of the world. As was pointed out by Bachelard, the creation of a poetic image does not require first-hand experience. The real and the unreal memories blend together. On Chinese social media platforms, users share the so-called Chinese-style dreamcore, or media that features old-fashioned Chinese residential buildings, interiors of schools, grocery stores, or markets. I personally cannot relate to them as I don't have an experience of growing up in China, but these videos still touch some strings in me. So, can someone else's longing for the past be understood by someone who has never experienced it? This ambivalent nature of nostalgia and displacement, as well as the possibility of understanding something you are not familiar with firsthand, I believe, was explored in Andrei Tarkovsky's Nostalgia. The main character, Andrei Gorchakov, travels to Italy and is completely absorbed in his thoughts and memories of Russia, which prevents him from enjoying the sights of Italy or the company of the gorgeous interpreter Eugenia, who looks like she just came out of Botticelli's painting. And yes, I watched and re-watched this movie for the plot. The only character that Andrei is getting close to is a local madman Domenico, who, by the way, lives or rather hides in a half-demolished building. Ding ding, ruin alert. First and foremost, the movie is liminal or dreamcore, if you will, in its usage of unconventional narrative structure. Characters are set on a journey through their memories, blending dreams and reality. The movie itself feels like a dream, which is the case with other Tarkovsky's movies. It captures this melancholic, nostalgic longing across space and time. Secondly, this movie is liminal because it deals with boundaries and thresholds. For instance, cultural boundaries prevent us from reaching some form of unification despite cultural differences. Cultural codes keep us back from truly understanding others. The main character at some point even proclaims in Italian, "We must destroy the boundaries," in a discussion on whether a person of one culture can understand the art of another. The boundary as a metaphor is also reflected in the fact that the main character is on a journey. Traveling is liminal. Tarkovsky said in one interview, quote, "Traveling around the world, we don't learn very much. I'm not sure that traveling always ends with a return. A person can never return to the starting point because they have changed during that time. And, of course, you can't escape from yourself. It's what we carry with us, our spiritual home, like a turtle's shell. Traveling around the world is only a symbolic journey, and wherever you end up, you continue to search for your soul." In general, Tarkovsky's Nostalgia deals with this cross-section of homesickness and the critical state of modern humans met with the hostility and indifference of the world. In one of his interviews, Tarkovsky said, "Nostalgia means longing for what is so far away from us, for worlds that cannot be united, but it also means longing for our native home, for our spiritual belonging." So there is an obvious exclusionary aspect of nostalgia, with the main character thinking that, for instance, Eugenia does not and cannot understand his homesickness and loneliness. Tarkovsky does not give a clear answer whether it's possible for cultural unification to happen. Yet the movie ends with Andrei Gorchakov continuing a ritual of Domenico, who was obsessed with the idea of walking with a lit candle through a mineral spring and thereby saving the world. So the souls of these two complete strangers from different countries who were only fleetingly in each other's lives still, even if only for a short while, converged. I think that in the same way, when we interact with online folklore of liminality or urban exploration videos, we actually come into contact with each other, even if only for a second, in some kind of metaphysical way, collectively leaping into beyondness. These days, it becomes increasingly difficult to find common ground and identify what unites people rather than what sets them apart. In online trends that creatively engage with ruins and abandoned spaces, postmodern subjectivity doesn't become a mechanism of separation, but rather plays a role as a unifying force with people essentially creating poetics of the 21st century. As was mentioned before, ruins and abandoned spaces reveal a specific mode of temporality that is imprecise, fragmented, and not always accessible in our daily lives. They provide a refuge in an age when media and technology are developing so fast that we are yet to even begin to comprehend the speed and cultural effects of this process. The interest in abandoned, liminal spaces and ruins may not live out as a popular trend in online culture, but its significance lies in the way it provides an alternative view on the relationship between memory, place, and nostalgia. The relationship that is enigmatic and hard to express in logical terms. These poetic explorations of abandoned places unexpectedly bring creativity and unity into a sphere that, for example, cultural critics like Mark Fisher consider doomed and purged of anything truly exciting and new.